Maxitov glass type. It's like the cat. It has a lens at the front, there's a mirror at the back, but it's a different design. It's a different design to the lens here. It's actually deposited onto the back of this, so it's not a separate mirror that's mounted onto something. It's actually part of this lens. And they work differently because when you focus, this lens is fixed, or this mirror is fixed, and the eyepiece moves in and out. So the optics can be actually better aligned because you don't have to mirror moving back and forth without getting out of alignment. So like the cat, they've got the advantage that they're short because the light path goes back and forth. They give a good image, again, like the cat, because you don't have the spikes or anything like that. The eyepieces at the back, you don't get the diffraction, so they're very similar to the cats, and they're actually cheaper. The 6-inch is much cheaper than a 6-inch catadioptric. But once you get above about 8 inches, they're very, very expensive to manufacture because the special glass at the front is actually quite difficult to manufacture at a larger size. So 8 inches is about the limit that you get that particular type of telescope. So just a quick comparison here. For a good 6-inch telescope, you can see the difference in cost. Newtonian, $300. A refractor, $12,000. Same size telescope gathers the same amount of light, you'll see the same number of stars. But you pay more than 10 times as much. The difference is the quality of the image in this would be superb. The quality in this would be good. And only good. So unless you've got a very small telescope that you can just hold up to the sky and look at something, you need something to put it on. Some sort of a mount like these. A tripod of some sort usually. There's three main types. There's altazimuth, which is this one. There's an equatorial like that one, and there's Dobsonian, which you'll see the bigger telescopes outside there tonight are all Dobsonians, and you'll see why they are once we get to that type of mount. Why you can have such big telescopes. The altazimuth goes around this way, and it goes up and down. So if you want to find a star, you move it around, you point it up. Very easy to use. It's intuitive. If you want to look over there, just move it around, you point it up and you have a look. It's very easy to use, particularly for kids, because the movements are very natural, very easy. You can also, you'll see some like this is a Meade out there. It's the same sort of thing. It's a different sort of mount. It's a bigger version of this, but it works the same way. It spins at the bottom and the telescope goes up and down as it goes around. Same type of design. The advantages, as I said, it's really good for a beginner because it's easy. If there's an object over there, like Jupiter's over there, swing it around and point it up, and there it is. Very easy to use. The eyepiece is usually always in a fairly comfortable position, particularly if it's a refractor. So the eyepiece will always just be down around here somewhere. It'll never be up over the top of the telescope or pointing down here or anything like that. And another thing that you won't need, which actually these are, I thought that was an equatorial. Last time I did this talk, it must have been a different telescope. It was an equatorial, that's not. The equatorial needs a big, heavy counterweight. Right, so basically a weight on the other end to counter the weight of the telescope. This doesn't have it, it's all balanced. So where you put the telescope, it stays. Disadvantages are that some of the cheap mounts can be really wobbly. So you're trying to look at something carefully, and a little bit of wind goes past and the whole telescope vibrates like this in the wind, or you touch the telescope and the whole thing shakes and you can't see anything, because it's not strong enough to hold the telescope and stop it vibrating. You can't easily take photos with it as well, it's the wrong sort of design. It's a bit more difficult to follow objects because they continue to move. They don't care that you want to have a look at this thing and you keep the telescope in one spot and before you know it, it's gone. You've got to continuously move the telescope and follow it as the Earth turns. The equatorial mount gets around that problem. If we were to point a camera directly about there, which is where the South Pole is, if you were at the South Pole and looked straight up, what you see about there would be directly above you. If you took a long exposure of several hours, even here, or even at home, and pointed in that general direction, you'll see all the stars go around in arcs around this point. That one point does not appear to move. And the equatorial gets around that, basically, it has this central part here, which you point at that spot in the sky, and as the things move, the telescope just turns around like that and follows it. So if the object's there, it just turns around like that. If it's there, it just turns around like that, and it follows it. So you only have to move one thing. And if you have a motor that does it, it'll do it all automatically for you. You can see here it has a counterweight. So you've got this weight up the top here. You've got a shaft in the middle, so it turns about there. And then you have the weight down the bottom. So you have to have the same amount of weight on one side as the other. Otherwise, when you let it go, it'll fall over. So you have to balance it so that when you leave it somewhere, it just stays there. The advantages are, the biggest one is if you want to take photography, because you can. Once you've got a motor that will continue to move in that one direction, it will keep that thing in the middle of your image, depending on how well it's aligned. And when you're following objects yourself, instead of having to move two things at once, you only need to move one axis. So they might have a little fine adjustment that you can adjust and it'll just follow the star. Disadvantages are that it takes a long time to set up. This thing, you just pick it up, plonk it in the background, back it up, point it at something, and you're done. You're finished. Equatorial, you've got to set it up, you've got to find where south is, set it to the right altitude, which you can leave once you've got it set, but it's still a little bit of fiddling around. The tripod's usually a lot heavier, so you can't necessarily pick the telescope up in one go and carry it somewhere. And it's also very unnatural. I've tried to use my equatorial for looking at terrestrial objects, say like a building or something, and it's very hard to line it up on it. This one, you just point it over and go, that's what I want to look at. With the equatorial, because it turns about that axis, as you move in one direction, it doesn't go in a straight line, it goes around. Yeah. So you move it to somewhere, it goes around, so then you've got to move the other one, and then it goes around. And you move it another way, and it goes around. And it takes you forever to try and locate a building or anything like that, which you can do in seconds with this type of mount. So they're not perfect. The other thing about the equatorial is they can be quite expensive. Even a small mount is a lot more expensive, because you imagine this can be a very simple design. There's not much to it. The equatorial, you're going to have all these different bits and pieces and wheels and things to turn. It's a lot more expensive. What Dobsonian? It's hard because it doesn't move around like that. If, say, you want to find the point there, you can't move the telescope in this direction. You have to move to there by going around. And then as you want to go down, it doesn't go down like that. It goes down like that. So now you've got to go around again. And then you might want to go up. But when you go up, it doesn't go up like that, it goes up like that. So then you've got to go back around. And it can be incredibly difficult to find even a building on the horizon. It's just, I've tried and it's really hard. Particularly because with the type of telescope I've got, the image is upside down. So when you want to go up, you have to go down. So you think, I want to go this way. Oh no, go this way. And then you just get lost. And then you can't even find the horizon. Whereas with this thing, it's not a problem. You just point it where you want it and then you're pretty close. So it's just, because it's an unnatural movement, it's really hard. Dobsonian, you'll see a number of the bigger telescopes out there are all Dobsonians. This is similar, it's an alt-azimuth mount like this, but the mount, instead of it being, because it's a reflector, it has big lens on the big mirror on the back. The mount is usually a fair way towards the bottom of the tube, because you've got a lot of glass down here. So it has to be basically at the balance point. Because because it's an alpha-azimuth, it's very easy to use because it just swivels on the bottom and you just point it up. So very easy to find objects. So it has all the advantages of this alpha-azimuth, but it has one big advantage. It can hold very large telescopes. And if you saw some of the bigger telescopes out there before it got dark, you can see some of them are quite large. And the other advantage is you can actually make those mounts by hand. So you can, if you're using Newtonian, you can make the mirror yourself. You can actually buy the tube. You can make all that yourself. You can make the Dobsonian mounts. You can get your chipboard from Bunnings and cut it all up and sand it and paint it. You can make almost the whole telescope in your garage at home. You can't do that with particularly equatorials, but these types of mounts, you can't easily do that. It's a lot of work. Disadvantage, you can't take photos because they don't go around before like the stars. So you have to constantly move the telescope as objects are moving. Like these ones, you have to move them. But if they're really well made, they're very easy to just hold the telescope and just make your body move the telescope tube. You keep the object, the star or the planet, in the middle without very much problem. So they're quite easy to use. So how do you set these mounts up? An alpha-azimuth is the easiest one. Basically, you put it somewhere flat, set it up all level, put the telescope tube on, unless it's light enough that you can pick the whole thing up, wait till it gets dark. That's all there is to it. You can put it anywhere you want. There's no procedures or anything. You stick it in your backyard, stick it in your front yard, put it on your roof if you want to. Dobsonian mount, much the same. You put that base, put the base there, sit it somewhere flat, like on the driveway or somewhere. That's it. Wait for it to get cool, or wait for it to get dark. If it's fairly big, you might have to wait for it to cool down a little bit, but you're ready to go. That's all you need to do. But what if you've got a really big one, right? These you can't just pick them out. I mean, this guy can. He has his own garage for storing his telescope, obviously, and he just wheels it out onto a big concrete platform. So if you've got a really big telescope, some assembly may be required. You may need to have a number of friends. Like this mirror here may weigh 100 kilograms. One person can't lift that. So you may need to at least have 3 or 4 friends. Otherwise you can't get your telescope out. You may need people to help you to assemble it. Right? Some of these telescopes you can see just how big they are. You don't just take that out of the garage.